Hey everybody, welcome to episode 75 of an ongoing series where we basically take the camera anywhere we want and we try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. It's the episode people said couldn't be done, Final Fantasy VII. And I gotta say, it feels good to plug your ears and say no to the naysayers. Because while there isn't a lot to show you, there is gonna be some things that are gonna be pretty special. Anyways, thank you Sorcerer Lance for the intro and Neko Run for the camera. You can check out links to them down below, and with that said, let's get going. So the first thing I want to show off is something that's very close to the start of the game. The developers of Final Fantasy VII hid a lot of versions of Cloud in this game. It's actually something I kind of want to do a separate video on, because you'd be really surprised by how many Clouds there are. But this model right here is something really special, because in this one instance there's a field model of Cloud that looks way more detailed than anything else in the field. Because what you see is the field model for Cloud is supposed to look something like this. Which, yeah, but this little artifact shows proof in itself that at one point this scene was supposed to show Cloud and Jesse's face, and that they probably intended to reuse this field model of Cloud in later parts of the game because he's fully modeled, whereas Jesse only has the torso up. But again, we were only able to actually see this in the game by manipulating the character coordinates. And you might have noticed that Cloud's legs were a little bit thick in that scene. I just wanted to show you in the character model viewer how it's supposed to look. But yeah, speaking of different character models for Cloud, let me give you another example. You know how in the Chocobo races, they usually have Cloud's back facing the camera, and you don't really get a good look at his face? Well, in the character model viewer, we can see what these characters would have looked like if we had a good look at their face. And we can see that they look like if someone put clothes on an uncooked chicken. So next up is something I first saw on Easy Ally's YouTube page. Great guys, they used to be the people that used to do game trailers, which was my favorite gaming website back in the day. Anyways, what they showed off, and what I'm going to show off to you, is a really weird relic left in the field data. If we go down this well in Coral Prison, there's an empty well. There's really nothing down here. But much like my Super Nintendo episodes that you guys seen in the past, Final Fantasy VII also incorporates layers. Only in Final Fantasy VII, you can trigger on and off layers at will. It's how they do things like open doors and whatever else. And one thing that players can't seem to trigger is this weird render of a doll on a top layer. I'm actually going to remove the background layer so that you can get a better idea of the outline of this object and have a better sense of what you're looking at. To me, it almost looks like a red cyan from Final Fantasy VI. And you know what? While we're in Coral Prison, there was something else I noticed. You know this gated off door here that's supposed to be the elevator to the Chocobo races? Well, I'm pretty sure that at no point you can open this gate or open this door. Even when Cloud's supposed to go up the elevator, they don't really show him go inside the elevator. But while tooling around with the layers in this area, I noticed that you can remove the grating and you can remove the door to show a doorway. You didn't think I was going to forget about battles, did you? Not a chance. In fact, there's way too much to cover with the battle scenes, because there is a mega load of environments that are featured in Final Fantasy VII. And going through each and every one would take forever and I wouldn't have anything to say. But I will highlight a few for this episode so that you guys get an idea of just how massive these areas are, and also show you some of the stuff that these battle scenes seem to hide because their cameras are so coordinated. Like for example, on this first boss fight, you can see the number 1998 on the top of the silo, which is shown in the field, but not in the battle itself. And also, for example, this battle with Dyne has a Shinra billboard on the other side of the battle map. Now, of course, this is going to open up a lot of questions for people. A lot of people are going to be asking me, like, is there anything behind the trains or anything like that? And I'm going to tell you right now, in most cases, pretty much all cases actually, if you take the camera behind a building, it just has backface culling. There's nothing really to see. But we will go back to the battle arenas very shortly for something a little more specific. And also keep an eye out for a live stream in the future showing off more areas. So as many of you know, the majority of Final Fantasy VII takes place with 3D models on a 2D screen. And if you were to remove these textures, all you would see in the background is complete darkness. But that doesn't mean that there isn't something 3D hidden behind here. Anyways, to get to my point, there's a vine in the lower right hand side of the screen, and it certainly does look like you should be able to climb it to get into the cave up above. But that's not the case in Final Fantasy VII, it's not allowed to happen. But understanding that this cave was at one point meant to be accessible is more than just a theory, there's actual concrete evidence to support it. If we dissect the top layer of this area, you can see that everything that is blue is supposed to allow Cloud to walk underneath it. Now, over by the cave, you can see that there's some blue over there, indicating that Cloud is supposed to walk behind that cave wall. But it doesn't even end there. See, although the environments look 2D, the characters in Final Fantasy VII are still walking in a 3D space. And so if we reveal the wireframes of the walk mesh, you can see for yourself that there's actually a walk mesh where that cave is supposed to be. Now, of course, I wanted to give you guys an awesome zoom out of the entire world map of Final Fantasy VII. Unfortunately, there isn't a way to do it right now. Necorun tried his best. He managed to actually get some more of the environment than the game's supposed to allow, but in-game, this is as good as it gets. See, the game loads its world map in chunks, so depending on where your character is on the coordinates, is what tells the game's engine to load what certain chunk. And so what we get as a result is a lot of environment that the player couldn't see in one shot, but unfortunately still not the entire world. You can use a map viewer to see even more of the environment, but even that has its flaws. Some of the textures don't load right, and once you get to a certain height, you still lose some of the environment. Something cool about this goofy looking sewer boss is that he has a water move that crashes into the players, and it looks really good for a PlayStation 1 game. So naturally I had to take a zoom out and see exactly what it looked like, get an idea of where the water began and ends. And as you can see, it just looks like a sheet of paper that flaps in the wind. Also to note here, the developers added sewer grading in this area, which I have to remind the audience, it's not common to see them add things to the map. Normally all the environments are one giant picture, and if you were to add or remove things, it's either because it has an action added to it, or make it part of a looping animation. But since we're on the subject of water, let's move on to a subject that I think a lot of people were waiting for, the summons, specifically Leviathan. See, Leviathan starts with his own sheet of water too, but there's a big difference though. Instead of rocking that sheet of water, they actually use a sphere that goes underneath the stage, but something completely separate is used for a tidal wave afterwards. So is there anything to say about the gold saucer? Well, I got two things for you. The first thing is these tunnels in the station area. Now, I'm not expecting everyone to have noticed this, but when I was a kid, I did notice that these pixels changed every time Cloud jumps into a tunnel. Well, being able to notice is a bit of a goof on the developer's part, but the reason why there's a goof is because if we remove the background layer, we can see that the rings are the only thing left, and that's because it can be a foreground layer for Cloud to jump into. But for some reason, just the way it is wasn't enough to mask Cloud. And this is probably because Cloud can walk well in front of the part where he's supposed to jump down. So what the developers did is that every time he jumps into the hole, the developers added an extra layer to overlap and make sure that it hides the Cloud model. And as for the Chocobo racing area, one thing I just want to say real quick, I had no idea that that was a Chocobo over to the right. It's so camouflaged in with everything else. But when you remove layers, you can actually see the outline of the Chocobo pretty well. And what's even cooler than that is that because it's an animating object, the developers once again made a rare move where if you remove the Chocobo, there's an actual full image of the building still underneath. So unfortunately, while moving the camera around during summons, some things get displaced, so it's not quite accurate, but I do still have things to show you guys. Like, for example, when you summon Odin, you can see that his background is just a rectangle texture. You can also see it in relation to where the enemies are. Hey, you know how towards the end of the game there's a meteor heading towards Earth and you can see it on the world map? Well, if we turn the camera enough, we can see that the meteor is only half a texture. Because why would you need the whole thing, right? Also, I wanted to take a look at the ruby weapon. Before you encounter the ruby weapon, he's only sticking his head out of the ground. But if we take the camera below the surface, we can see that all of his limbs are pretty much bunched up. Okay, I'm gonna do something that's a little bit risky. I'm gonna actually try to pronounce a word from Final Fantasy. Now, normally I pronounce this summon Bahamut, but sources on the internet are telling me it's Bahamut, so, yeah. Okay, anyway, so there's three versions of the Baja Blaster Boys. Regular, Neo, and Zero. The first one I want to show you is Neo, because what he does is he brings the enemies up into the clouds to then destroy the platform that they rose up on. Quite possibly the best part about all of this is an unused circular texture off to the right. I think it's also really interesting to see the partition of clouds. From an outside perspective, it's just a giant cylinder. Next up is the first version, and there's not much to say about this one. It's kind of neat to see the effects from a different angle because you can see that it's an actual cone. But if I didn't include this, I know that people will be asking, so here you go. And here's the toughest one they got, 0. All I can really say is that they put their heart and soul into these summons. It's insane how beautiful these cinematics look for a PlayStation 1 game. The only two things that are really worth noting here that's kind of difficult to see is that there's a starry skybox, but there's a smaller skybox inside as well. And in this shot, you can see where the beam starts when it hits the enemy. Here's a few more instances of hidden environments, like this flashback scene with Barrett and Dine. You can see that the regular town has a texture of trees behind it. And because there's moving honeybees at the Honeybee Inn, if you remove their layer, you can see completely behind them. And just to cap this off, here are 2 more iconic areas. The most mysterious things that put you in almost like a dreamlike state is the final battle with Sephiroth. So naturally, I had to see what was going on in this battle scene. And it turns out the battle arena is almost like 2 cones smushed together. The reason why it's shaped this way is to give it a sense of depth, like it goes really far out. But you might be asking yourself, what's up with the texture underneath this battle arena? I mean, how is the player ever supposed to see that? Well, I can actually answer that for you. That texture is supposed to be the sky that breaks apart when Sephiroth does his big move. And what does that special move look like at different camera angles? Well, there isn't much to talk about it, but I'll still show it to you anyway in the outro. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Really quick before I show you some extra footage, I just want to let you know that if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, here are 3 games that I'm going to be doing in the future, so consider it. If you haven't seen any of my other videos, here's some stuff that I've done in the past that is kind of related to Final Fantasy VII, so it's worth checking out. I'll leave links to it down below. Anyways, so super huge, I'm actually part of a beta program with YouTube right now. They're allowing me to sell my shirts on my own pages. So those links that you'll see down below for t-shirts and stuff, that's me. I'm actually selling that. So if you want to support the show, you know, you got an easy link right there. Also, the people that are participating in the contest for the Nintendo Force giveaway, the contest is almost up. You only got 2 more days. I'll leave another link for that down below just because there's a couple of days left. Why not? But you'll know very soon if you're a winner, and just check your emails and we'll help you out. We'll hook you up, man. Anyways, huge thank you to Sorcerer Lance who did the animation this week. Like I said at the start of the episode, you'll see a link to him down below. And the same goes for Necorun, who's actually doing a new show. It might be out today. If it is, I'm going to leave a link to that video in the video description down below too. I believe it's about Persona 5. So it's kind of a good mix. Anyways, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.